More coming in. I thought that looked pretty good. Right. All right, you guys ready? How's everybody doing? Boy, there we go. Enthusiastic crowd. We're glad to see you. All righty, it is 6 o'clock, and we have a special guest to kick this off tonight. I have got Kaylin Burdine with me. And Kaylin is a first grader at Will Rogers Elementary School. Her parents are Chad and Jessica Burdine. It's also my granddaughter. We didn't have a kid here, so I just went out and grabbed her. So anyway, we're going to turn it over to Kaylin. She's usually really shy. Yeah, right.
I call this meeting to order.
Good job.
Good job.
All right, good job. All right. So we will call the roll.
Matthews,
Here.
Ingalls, Flood,
Here.
Bolt,
Here.
Rutherford,
Here.
Seahorn,
Here.
Salter,
Here.
we have a quorum.
All righty, very good. I think, Travis, you're going to do the invocation for us?
Father God, thank you for another day, God, just to be about the business of the city of Shawnee. God, we thank you for the moisture. God, we needed it so much, and we just pray as that water brings life back to the ground, God, I pray that we continue to do our best to bring life to this city. God, we thank you for the amazing individuals who have devoted their lives and their times to making this the best place that we can all live, love, and serve each other. God, we thank you and we praise you. So in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to change things up a little bit on you. I've got a couple young ladies that are going to help us with the flag salute. They're right up front. You guys come on up a little bit. Well, you can come up here. Come on up here. Come on up here. Use the microphone. So I've got Nadine and Alexia, and I'm going to try the last name, Nasabimana, and they are daughters of, over here, because your parents are trying to take a picture, of Pastor Gerard and Alina and Sabimana. Gerard is the pastor at Wesley United Methodist Church. And so I saw the other day that they had led the flag salute at the school board meeting, and I said, well, why don't you come do that for us? So the flag is, where's our flag? It's over here. So there you go. I'm going to leave it to you guys, and you guys use the microphone and take it away.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job. Thank you so much for helping us. All righty, item 1 is citizen participation. We've got a pretty good list tonight. Same as always, 3 minutes per person, 12 minutes per subject. Joe will be our timekeeper. If you get to 3 minutes, we'll give you a sign that it's time to stop. So you probably won't hear any responses from us. You may hear something in commissioners' comments. First up, I've got Amy Camarada. So Amy, come on forward. Microphone's all yours. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'll be quick and brief. I just want to formally thank you for allowing additional time and consideration with the advisory committee to explore the needs and opportunities at the Shawnee Twin Lake. As you know, the committee was comprised largely by city representatives, 3 lake residents, and 3 city residents. As you'll hear in the presentation later, there could be a lot of work ahead. I hope you will thoughtfully consider the various options presented and move forward to provide both a safer lake experience and a more thought-out future development of the Shawnee Twin Lakes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for serving. Second is Cheryl Ball. Cheryl? Yes, ma'am. Come on up. How are you? Thank you for coming to talk to us.
I think I've given you a couple of handouts there about the cemetery,
Yes, ma'am.
and I appreciate you hearing me tonight. I'm here more or less on behalf of the Dockery family. My cousin recently passed away, and she was interred at the mausoleum. If you've got this picture that I think they made copies for you, the hole you see there below Claude J. Dockery, that's where she was supposed to be placed. However, when they went in to examine it, you can see to the right, that's my grandmother, Willie Francis, and Lance Cullen, my cousin. You can see how those look like they're deteriorating. And they were concerned that placing her, my cousin, in that particular spot was going to cause potentially those to collapse. And so they decided to place her in a different spot. I provided a list there. Currently, we have 11 family members there. And we have 3 others that have deeds and plan to be. My aunt currently, who I'm speaking on behalf mostly tonight, she's currently on hospice and she plans to be there. My aunt, my mother, who her son is Claude J. Dockery III, a Vietnam veteran, he's there, and she's not able to go and, observe him at where he's resting because the building is not habitable, for us to go in there and spend any time at all. She hasn't been actually in there for a couple of 3 years, been able to go, and now it's completely closed, and so no one is going in there. We weren't able to go in for the burial of my cousin. I would like you to consider doing what you can. I know it's expensive. I know there's a lot of different considerations, that you're looking at, but it's not getting better. It's getting worse. And something, one way or another, needs to be done, and I appreciate you taking that into consideration tonight when I know it's on your agenda to an extent, to be thinking about that and deciding what to do. One last thing I might point out to you. Benjamin Franklin said, "Show me your cemeteries and I'll tell you what kind of people you have."
Yep. Thank
Something
you,
to think about.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Wolf Googler. I don't know, I saw him back there. There he is. How are you doing, Wolf?
I'm doing well. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm going to parrot a fair bit of what Amy said. I just wanted to thank you for appointing me to the Twin Lakes Lake Advisory Committee. I would agree, we had great representation. We had Commissioner Ingalls, Commissioner Seahorn, 2 city staff, the city attorney who did a great job chairing us. We had 3 lake residents. We had residents at large. We all had the chance to tour the lake by water and by car. We broke into our subgroups. I believe we came up with some good recommendations that I'm looking forward to hearing Joe's presentation tonight for you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All righty, next up, Steve Musney. How are you doing?
Hello. I live in Smoking Oaks, 4th Edition. There was recently 5 new houses built, which is Bentley Oaks. on Hardison Drive, which goes through Smoky Oaks. When I bought my house 15 years ago, I was told that a moratorium was in place with no more houses being built. To prevent houses being built in that area, since there is only one way in and one way out of Smoky Oaks for the district. People have know about the moratorium, but have not been able to locate a copy of it. Per city code 10-1.b says land shall not be subdivided unless it's such character that it can be used safely for building purposes without danger to health, prevail from fire, flood, or other menace. And land shall not be subdivided until public facilities and improvements exist or property provisions have been made for necessary improvements such as drainage, water, sanitary sewer, and transportation facilities. I'd like an explanation to how it was approved to build more houses in our neighborhood. No one can give me a straight answer, let alone know their city codes that they're supposed to enforce.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, Fiona Shaughnessy. How's Fiona?
Fiona's great. How
It's
are
good.
you all?
Doing great.
Good. I have some exciting news to share with you all on behalf of Shawnee Forward. I am so excited to announce something that we have been in pursuit of for almost 12 long months here at Shawnee Forward. Effective January 31st, Governor Kevin Stitt has recognized Shawnee, Oklahoma as the #1 city in the state of Oklahoma for women business owners. Woo! It is official. The proclamation is posted on the state website, and I want to personally invite you all to attend the press conference happening Thursday, February 24th. February 24th at 2 p.m., Shawnee Forward will host a press conference at South Central Industries to have someone from the governor's office to read the proclamation and celebrate this distinction. We expect about 70 to 100 people for the announcement, so please mark your calendars to attend if possible.
Very good.
Yes.
Great
and that
news.
is all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. And let's see, last tonight is Rob Morris. How are you doing, Rob?
Pretty good. I just had a couple things tonight. I was glad to hear that we can't use the new rule to be able to take away from the $8.8 million from the ARPA money, and that'll all get used for infrastructure like it was meant. I was really glad to hear that. Hopefully we can get to figuring out exactly where that's going to go. The Lake Committee, man, I read it all, and as much stink as I've made up here, I think they did a hell of a job tonight. I do think it's important to point out that there's a misconception that y'all are voting on something tonight and y'all aren't. I mean, it's just a presentation. The last thing, can we verify that everybody still lives in their ward? That would be appreciated. With that, that's all I got.
All right, thank you very much. And let's see, double check. Nope. All right, that was everybody. All righty, we are to item 2. Consider approval of consent agenda. And let's see, I think, Benny, you said you got one you
Yes,
want to take
Mr.
off.
Mayor, I would like to pull item 2A, as I was not present for that meeting.
Okay. Anybody got anything else you want to pull? I think that's probably the shortest list I've seen on there. Wasn't a lot on there. Anyone like to make a motion?
I make a motion we approve item 2, withholding item A.
All righty, very good.
I'll second.
Daniel and Mark. So approval of everything with the exception of item 2A that Benny like pulled out. Okay, so we'll call the question then. And that passes 6-0, so we're to 2A.
I'll move to approve item 2A.
All righty, thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Daniel and Travis. Okay, so we've We'll call the question on approval of 2A. So we have 5 in favor and 1 abstention. So item 3. Presentation of animal control. Do we have a pet of the week? Looks like we do. See him out there. Oh, little bitty one.
Good evening.
How are you?
Doing well. Hope you guys are too.
Yeah.
She's mad I woke her up.
Yeah. I don't blame her.
I'm Justin with Animal Welfare. Currently at the shelter, we have 19 dogs and 2 cats. We have had 2 reclaims for the dogs, adopted out 2 dogs and 1 cat. We are planning a Valentine's promotion. That's we don't have all the details yet. As they become available, you can check that on our Facebook page.
Okay.
And this right here is Kelly. I didn't name her. She's our senior cat there at the shelter. She is fixed, calico. She only has her top front teeth, so her tongue kind of hangs out. She is very warm and friendly, and she gets along with other cats. Low adoption fee, $5.
All righty.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. All righty, we are up to item 4, acknowledgement and ratification of declaration of the mayor of the city of Shawnee declaring an emergency within city limits and such additional territory as may be described herein, authorizing the actions of the city manager pursuant to state laws in the municipal code of the city of Shawnee. So our city manager, Andrea, you are up.
I am, if my paper would coordinate with me. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. All of you have just been through a somewhat harrowing week. We started the week off with a wildfire and then went right into winter storm warning. The governor declared an emergency on February 1, and we followed order, expecting below freezing temperatures, near zero wind chills, and we knew that we had to prepare for potential disaster. I am glad to report that it didn't turn out to be a disaster after all, and city forces managed everything very well, having learned from the previous February ice storm. So we declared the emergency. We are now awaiting word whether there was enough damage to actually consider reimbursement by FEMA. So stick with us, and we'll let you know as we find out.
Hopefully we didn't have much damage.
That is correct.
This
yeah.
is just something we normally do so that we're in line to get money from FEMA if in the
Absolutely.
event something happens. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much. So this is something we do have to vote on. So we just need to vote to acknowledge the fact that I signed that declaration the other day. So anyone like to make a motion on that?
I'll move to approve item 4.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll second.
You sweat.
Yeah, really, it's guys, it's just so we can get money here. So I think I heard you, Travis.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 4, and then we'll call the question. Motion passes 6-0. We're up to item 5, discussion and consideration to provide financial assistance for the Shawnee Civic and Cultural Development Authority related to the 2022 International Finals Rodeo. And Madam City Manager, you're up again. Oh, Randy's up. You got taller.
I did.
How you doing, Randy?
Good. Mayor, City Commissioners, thank you for allowing us to come before you this evening. Very exciting about the International Finals Youth Rodeo. This will be our 30th year here at the Expo Center. Actually, it'll only be the 29th event that we've had. We had a little break in action a couple of years ago, but things are really good. We're really excited about the rodeo. In 21, we had 674 contestants that came. They were from 32 states. Very exciting to be in Shawnee, kind of a highlight for us this year. We, Suzanne actually invited the governor to come ride a horse, carry the flag. Some of you were there for that evening and did an outstanding job. Of course, you worry about the governor riding a horse in your hometown, so, but it all worked out. And then another little exciting there at the end of the year on the social media aspect of it, the governor and his staff agreed that, and actually voted that was his #1 picture of the year.
I saw that.
I've actually seen it used on some of the television commercials, so pretty prideful moment of us to have the governor of the great state of Oklahoma riding a horse at the IFYR in Shawnee, Oklahoma at the Expo Center. So we're very proud of that. We look forward to the event. We appreciate the partnership that we've had with the city of Shawnee for many years. We look forward to continuing that partnership, and we certainly appreciate the support of the city of Shawnee. So we look forward to year 30. So, and with that, if you have any questions about the IFYR, and I noticed that Trustee Lance Wortham's here, he could probably answer the questions. So
The hard ones anyway, right?
The hard questions. So again, thank you for your continued support.
All right, thank you. Anybody got questions for Randy while we go in there?
I just want to say thank you to all of you for the hard work that you all put into it. It was an amazing event, and I was very proud to be part of it last year, and know that the awesome young men and young women that come and compete it's something special to see and be a part of, and I hope that it can continue for many years. So.
Thank you.
Just to echo Travis, I think I went out three to four nights, and you all were gracious hosts. I went out mainly to learn as a newer commissioner. What our relationship is, how we can improve it, how we can make the event better for our community. I think we took away some good learning points, and hope we can continue to improve the event for the contestants, also for our community. You're right, it was a little nerve-wracking having a governor on a horse. I met Senator Inhofe and told him I was from Shawnee. He said, I broke my leg there in the Christmas parade one year. So I can't verify whether that's true, but I'm glad it didn't happen this time.
At least they have a memory of Shawnee.
Yeah, it's a memory. It's a great event for our community. I mean, I remember it from as a kid, and look forward to another great year.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody good?
Well, I'll ask a question. I'm sure people are wondering. Last fiscal year, the city as well as the county donated $100,000, $50,000 each.
Yes.
And now we're being asked for another $50,000. What's that going to be used for?
That money will be used for the operational side of the event. In the past, we had actually had the employees that worked at the Expo Center did a lot of the legwork and a lot of the footwork. Well, we don't have that anymore, so that'll be used for the operational side for the rodeo. So we can have another one.
So is the SCCDA, I guess at some point, the city and the county and the SCCDA are supposed to get together on what the SCCDA did as far as giving assets away to the county that really, who's to say whose assets they are? And then also,
It's my understanding there's a mediation group that is set up that at some point will meet when it comes.
Yeah, I can actually confirm to the commission as of about 5:15 today. That's set for February 22nd. It'll take place here in Shawnee. It's my understanding that the county commissioners will be doing theirs in meeting. Obviously, this group is designated a non-quorum group to participate on behalf of the city of Shawnee, but that is a commission meeting night. And so the expectation will be if agreement is reached that we'd come back here to this meeting and ratify at that time.
So
And then I would also, just for clarity, Commissioner Sehorn, apologize for interrupting. At this point in time, and Randy can correct me if I'm wrong, but there have been no transfers or attempted transfers pending the outcome of the mediation.
That's correct.
And I guess from last year's rodeo, all the accounts are paid and everything's
To my knowledge,
to
yes.
your knowledge.
Yes.
Anybody got any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So,
Which we've already got 50,000 budgeted.
right, that's my understanding. I think we did, this money we did find was already budgeted,
We did find the money.
yes.
So what harm would it do to wait until the arbitration? What did has the county made, have they voted on it yet?
The
On
county,
their 50,000, Randy? I mean, I know you need to get rolling.
I'm actually on their agenda next Monday.
Okay.
So
They haven't done anything yet.
all the commissioners independently, not against the Open Meeting Records Act, Mr. Vondran, but they,
That's not your problem.
they're all in favor of doing the same as last year, doing the 50,000 and of course, they've, I mean, they're all in favor of doing that, so I'll be on their agenda next Monday. So,
But, I mean, to answer your question, whether we did it tonight or next time, I don't know what the difference would be unless
Well,
there was
I
a
mean, we
problem in
either have it
delaying
or
it.
we don't.
Yeah, I think we had it in the budget, so,
We can specifically designate, right? Like, we can make a motion, maybe this is to Joe, we can make a motion that it's used for, and I think that's what the ask is, for the 22 IFYR,
Correct.
where it could only be expended for,
So it's going, it can only be spent for the rodeo.
Correct.
yes.
and not just only for the rodeo, but for the 22 rodeo.
22 rodeo. Yeah, I think your point is if the money, if for some reason.
For some reason it didn't happen,
Yeah.
or if there were outstanding debts, like, this is for the,
For the
Right.
22
So-
rodeo.
you couldn't pay an outstanding debt
Or
and then say,
some-
sorry, we don't have money for the 22. Like, this can only
Yeah.
be expended for 22 expenses.
I would also add that, again, I think I'm speculating a little bit, Commissioner Matthews, but to the extent, and I think this goes to your point, Commissioner Sehorn, to the extent there's a change in disposition of the ownership or the operational responsibility of the rodeo as a result of the mediation on the 22nd, it sounds like you just want to ensure that the dollars follow the rodeo and maybe not necessarily the city of
entity
Shawnee,
that's-
Potawatomi County, or the SCCDA. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. And such a motion could be made, should it be tied to the event itself?
Okay.
Which I guess it was kind of my understanding it was already in the budget designated for that purpose for the rodeo, unless I misunderstood.
but once we transfer the money to another entity,
Mhm.
that's,
No, absolutely, you lose control then, absolutely.
The request is for IFYR 22.
Right.
2022, it kind of
Yeah,
sounds
that's-
funny, but
yeah.
2022, so this year.
Yeah,
Our next meeting being the 21st, that meeting.
The 22nd.
22nd.
yeah, the holiday.
holiday.
The holiday.
22nd.
President's Day. There you go.
It doesn't
You'd
show
have
up on
been-
that
you'd have been- you'd have been here by yourself.
It happens.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what that other little dot is.
There you go. Yeah. What's your pleasure?
It's already a budgeted item, and so we would just be following through with the budget that was
Right.
currently set. And the only thing that we have discussed is possibly making an amendment to where it is designated as specifically spent for the 22 rodeo. And so I think that at this time, I would like to, propose that we make said, amendment to that and designate it for the IFYR 2022 rodeo.
So that was your motion.
That's my motion.
I still have a question.
So once we second, then we can enter discussion, correct?
Yes.
I'll second the motion so that we can have discussion.
Was it actually in the budget, or did we have to look to find money in the budget to cover the 50,000?
It was in the budget, hidden under multiple layers, and it was one small description that our interim finance director was able to find after several hours of search. So it was not immediately apparent, but yes, the money was intentionally put there for the IFYR.
Would in the budget poorly labeled be an accurate description?
Small descriptor, difficult to find, would be
And to be clear, not poorly labeled by our interim finance director.
correct.
He's the hero in the situation.
Important distinction.
He is my hero.
Yeah.
He stayed until the wee hours before the storm to find it.
Thank you, Jacob. Any other questions? Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll call the question.
Do we designate the amount in it, or is it just a motion to approve financial assistance to SCCDA for the IFYR?
I think the designated amount
Budgeted
Was
amount.
was budgeted amount.
Yeah.
And so if it, was it designated when the motion was made? I apologize.
I don't hear it, so I don't remember hearing it, so we
I
might want
didn't. I did not specify the amount. I just specified the budgeted amount.
Yes.
So, which was 50,000.
That was my understanding.
Yes.
I think for an abundance of clarity, if the commission would entertain it and amending that motion
Okay.
and a re-second before voting to include the dollar figure would be
Okay.
more clear.
All right. So I would at this time like to amend that motion and include the budgeted amount of $50,000 towards the IFYR 2022 rodeo. Yes, ma'am.
I will once again second the amended motion.
So
Yes, sir.
it's designated to the 2022 IFYR. Is it also designated to the SCCDA in that motion? I mean,
Just
there's mediation forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
If there's some type of change to that organization were to possibly take place, then where do we stand?
Yourself, Commissioner Salter, Commissioner Matthews, city manager, and I will be at that mediation, and I suspect we will keep a keen eye on that very issue. But again, ultimately, I know the question was asked, I don't know if Mr. Gilbert responded, that it was necessary between now and then, essentially 2 weeks and a day from now. And so it could be contingent upon the outcome of that. But as the city manager has referenced, I mean, once we requisition those funds, it would be much more difficult to get them back. And that's certainly not implying in any way, shape, or form that the SCCDA would do anything than what they've been authorized for. But from a strictly city standpoint, I think that that is a consideration that warrants.
They're already designated, correct? As in today, whether we make this motion or not, we're just.
For the event, yeah.
What was the descriptor? I apologize.
It was literally IFYR.
Okay.
So we're just trying to be intentional about clarifying that it be used for this current season.
So the budget that you approved, approved that for IFYR, did not approve it for SCCDA.
Right.
Okay, that was my question, because in what we have here, it lists SCCDA. But if the motion is not going by this, it's just what was said.
Yes.
Right. Correct.
Strictly for the 2022 IFYR.
Yes.
Correct.
That was the clarification. So we have a motion and a second,
I have
correct?
one more question referring to all this. If we don't designate SCCDA, can we transfer funds to them? I don't think we're changing the intent of the motion. I just want to make sure that, can we transfer the funds to SCCDA based on this motion for the IFYR 2022, or would that require us to pay something directly? I'm just trying to save runaround later.
I'm going to let Jacob correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be okay because the SCCDA owns the IFYR. They do.
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure we cover our bases.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? All righty, then we will call the question. Motion passes 6-0. All righty, so item 6, consideration of resolution, the mayor and city commissioners of the city of Shawnee that amends the project maintenance agreement with Oklahoma Department of Transportation for the wayfinding sign project. And Seth is up. How are you,
Yes,
sir?
sir. Pretty good. How about you guys?
Great.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, this is really an item to set up a future project we'd like to see take place. So in the recent months, the city manager's office reached out to me about potentially adding a gateway sign at the Farrell Street and 177 interchange. And what I mean by gateway sign is the kind of monument signage that we have currently at Harrison and Kickapoo as you come off of I-40. The kind of stone. The one on Harrison always catches my eye because it's in the median.
Right.
But since all the gateway signs are installed along state highway corridors, they're governed by a maintenance agreement with ODOT. And so in 2016, we entered into a project agreement with ODOT for the installation and maintenance of gateway signs, among other wayfinding signage. And as I stated, to set up the future gateway sign that we'd like to install for the Farrell Street project, we need to get an approval for ODOT in the form of the addendum to that original agreement. So with that, staff does recommend approval of the resolution and project addendum, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody got any questions for Seth while we've got him here? See some still reading, so I'm gonna give them a chance to look that over. You're good, Benny? Mark, you all right? Okay. Good. All righty. I don't think anybody's got any questions. Excellent. Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve number 6.
Thank you, sir. I'll be glad to make the second on that. All righty, we have a motion and a second. I think you were up.
I think so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A
Thank you,
resolution of the mayor and city commission of the city of Shawnee, Oklahoma that amends a project maintenance agreement with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation for the wayfinding sign project.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. We will call the question. Motion passes 6-0. Thanks, Seth. All right. Item 7, consideration of resolution to declare real property located at 504 South Kickapoo Avenue as surplus property, authorizing staff to solicit bids to sell the property and set a minimum bid. You're up again, sir.
Yes, sir. It's me again. This is really pretty simple. We acquired this parcel through the Kickapoo Street right-of-way acquisition process. We've retained the necessary easement and right-of-way for that project, and the old structure has been removed and the land is currently vacant. So staff doesn't see a reasonable utilization of the property and really only see a maintenance expense once spring comes around and we start having to mow it again. So with that, I'm requesting a declaration of surplus, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Questions you guys got? Or does anybody have any? No questions? Anyone
Is
like
there
to
a-
make a motion? No, go ahead.
Sorry, I
Travis.
apologize. Is
No,
there
no.
a minimum bid that must be set, or is it just a?
So we haven't put the official bid documents together just yet. So there hasn't been, I would say, an official minimum bid. But my plan, and this is obviously subject to change with the city manager's office, but it was to set the minimum bid at the fair market value appraisal that we had done prior to acquisition.
Okay, very good. Awesome.
Anybody got any other questions? Anyone make my motion?
Move to approve item 7.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution declaring certain real property located at 504 South Kickapoo Avenue, also known as a strip, piece, or parcel of land lying in lots 3 and 4, Block 3, Inglewood Addition to the City of Shawnee, in Section 24, Township 10 North, Range 3 East, in Pottawatomie County, Oklahoma. Said parcel of land being described as follows. All of lots 4 and 4, guessing that's 3, containing 7,000 square feet, 0.16 acres, more or less, surplus and no longer needed for city purposes, describing said property and authorizing staff to advertise for sealed bids for the sale of said property.
Thank you, sir. All righty, we have a motion and a second. We'll call the question. Motion passes 6-0. Item 8, acceptance of the donation of adaptive kayak launch. Madam City Manager.
Good evening again. Kayaking has become a popular recreation sport at our Twin Lake number 2. And with an interest in opening this particular water sport to a wider public, including those with mobility limitations or disabilities, 7 community entities have come together to raise funding to purchase an adaptable kayak launch. Among these 7 are the Avitas Foundation, the Shawnee Community Foundation, the now no longer existing Shawnee Twin Lakes Association, First United Bank, First National Bank and Trust, Shawnee Water Sports LLC, and Bank First. Together, they raised $51,300.48 to purchase this adaptable kayak launch. It is special because it allows those with mobility limitations or wheelchair use to get into the water without any additional assistance, so they can use this launch on their own. It has several different components that makes this possible, including ADA compliant handrails, a step-down bench that allows easy transfer from a wheelchair, for example. It has the guides that allow the kayak to be supported while entering and exiting. And at this point in time, we have letters and emails from all of the funders who have expressed a desire for the city to take this on as one of the city assets. I'd be more than happy to answer any question you have.
Anybody got questions? I don't
Basically,
see-
this just gives us the ability to do
Right.
something with it.
Right.
It allows us to put it on our insurance records and everything, yes. In terms of financial impact, there are no immediate financial impacts. In future year budgets, we will have to consider maintenance of the Kayak launch.
Any other questions? No? Very good. All righty, how about a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the
Thank you,
donation.
sir. Motion. We need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll call the question. Motion passes 6-0. Item 9 is report of the Lake Advisory Committee, and I think Joe's up for that.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I'm going to apologize in advance when I'm craning my neck to see a screen so that I know that we're on the right spot together. And here we go. All right. Well, first things I want to do, and we got a little bit of a precursor from some of the committee members during citizen comments, but really do want to express thanks to the commission. Candidly, I had my trepidations about this process, but the group that was put together by the mayor and commission, and the amount of work that went into this was really enlightening. Had a robust conversation. We didn't always agree, but we're able to build a consensus working through these issues, and I think we all learned a lot, and I hope through the process of this presentation, the commission learns a lot, and with subsequent questions, and as we work through these issues leading up to the 22nd, when we may or may not take action, but are certainly slated to do so. With that, I do want to extend a thanks to the committee as well. There was a lot of hours put into this, a lot of independent research, a lot of meetings, which you'll see that they were able to attend and participate in and really provide valuable input. That being said, I'm going to try and be as efficient with the presentation and the recommendations as I can. It's a little difficult to squeeze hundreds of hours into 10 pages and 30 slides. But my hope is when we leave here in about 3 hours, you guys will have a good understanding of all of the work that went in. No, we'll try and keep it a little shorter than that. I did want to kind of address a theme that we didn't go into the process with, but I felt like we left the process with. And what that was is that we agreed that it was very important that we not create recommendations that were fire, ready, aim. We needed to go in the right order. We needed to be ready, we needed to aim, and we needed to fire. Because there are finite resources, there are difficult decisions that this group has to make, and in order for those to be the correct decisions or the most informed decisions, we have to take the steps on the front end to be ready and to take aim before we pull the trigger. And so as you hear us go through this and hear some of these recommendations, I would like you to keep that in mind because it did become an overriding theme of the group, especially as we really whittled this down into the final recommendations. A couple of things we know, a couple of things I really share to remind the commission, to remind the public. Our job was very limited in scope. We don't have the considerations that this group does. We weren't responsible for a budget. We weren't responsible for roads on the west side of town in addition to trying to improve the lake. But we want you to know that we recognized those challenges and limitations that the city staff has and that this commission has. And we understand that you have to weigh those. We understand that in weighing those, you may not be able to implement all of the recommendations. You may not be able to implement most of the recommendations. But as time and money allows, hopefully they'll be here as a resource for you and for your successors as we attempt to really bring the lake into this century with our regulations and with opportunities. So I'm going to begin with a brief review of our process and timeline. I know you've seen it before, but I think it's helpful to understand that process, ease into the work group recommendations, and then I'll close with discussion of short and long-term priorities. Down. Again, meetings, we had 5 full committee meetings. This does not include the work group meetings, which took place independent of the full committee meetings. This does not include independent research that each of the members of the committee did on their own to bring back to the meetings. But you see over that time period from the end of August until the middle of last month that there was significant in-person time spent with the group at large. As a result of that, you told me not to do that. Yep. Now it's just cycling through. Can I stop that? While we're getting that fixed, I will address what those work groups were. They were identified through a preliminary process that we conducted as a group at large to identify what the primary concerns were, and we were able to narrow it to 3. That was safety and code enforcement, which became one of the work groups, commercial development, property issues being the second work group, and finally the third, facility improvement and recreation. Those groups worked to vet recommendations that were then brought back to the larger groups. And then within the larger group, they were vetted, massaged, and ultimately are what you see here today as a product of the full committee. These are recommendations. We understand that they are just that, but we hope that they provide a framework for the commission. So if I can. All right. That gets us right where we need to be. So we're obviously, well, we're still getting that a little bit worked out. While we're here tonight on the 7th, again, to present only, I think that's been addressed. So we're going to provide this presentation to the group and allow for questions, comments, any input that you might have. And then really starting tomorrow morning, we'll take that input on the staff level and to the committee if necessary as they hear any recommendations or concerns that come from this group and incorporate those comments, concerns, recommendations into a final product that we hope to present to you on February 22nd for a vote. That will enable a proper timeline for city staff to implement those changes prior to lake season, which was the consideration that we brought before this group when we were last here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and kind of launch into these work group recommendations. Feel free to interrupt, commissioners, as we go through these. I want there to be clarity. I don't want anything to go unsaid. Just so you guys know, procedurally, it's my intention to take a break specifically for questions after each work group recommendation and after each work group breakout in total. But if there's something that just jumps up, feel free. We'll do our very best to answer that. Okay. Well, we can start there. That's where I need to be. The first one was safety and code enforcement. And so, as you guys are aware, there's virtually limitless ideas, projects, recommendations in all categories, but the committees did work hard to narrow it down into a digestible amount and hopefully feasible items in this work group and the others, but particularly here in safety and code enforcement. We're looking at number 1 being a lake ranger, number 2, emergency response facilities, and number 3, posting of regulations. And so diving into the lake ranger piece, and I know you guys have it in front of you and we've got it up there as well. It's not a coincidence this is the first recommendation. As the committee worked through this, nearly every issue discussed included a lake ranger as a key component of current and future success. Ultimately, the committee concluded that there is no point in updating ordinances if there's no one to enforce them, improving facilities if they can't be kept clean and supervised, requiring permits if not monitored, and recognizing the inability of current staff to effectively enforce building codes at the lake just because of staffing reasons, not because of talent in the building. Just not enough hours in the day. I cannot emphasize enough that the committee believes that the addition of a lake ranger would be highly impactful, and something that could happen and be impactful fairly immediately. So the precise language we've agreed upon is to budget for and retain qualified personnel to oversee safety response and code enforcement at the Shawnee Twin Lakes. It is important that the full-time employee tasked with these duties have a consistent daily presence on land and in the water. The Lake Advisory Committee understands that FTEs come with a cost, and therefore what is needed may not be feasible, but would rank options for consideration as follows. If we could scroll, if we've got that ability. We've laid this out really into three options. There's flexibility within these three options. There might be a fourth option that could come up. But I think these generally address the concerns that the committee has within the recommendation. The first being 2 full-time employees, 1 dedicated law enforcement officer and 1 certified code enforcement officer. That's probably in an ideal world. And that's a lot of manpower, obviously a lot of resources. The second one would be a contract code enforcement officer to serve for 6 months to a year to address a backlog of issues at the lake. I know many of you are familiar with it, but in our tours, we were particularly the water tour, we were able to see a lot of very obvious code enforcement violations, whether it's dilapidated docks that create safety hazards, or structures on the cabin site leases themselves that are not being kept up to standards. There is a backlog, and there is a need to clean that up, and it will be a time and labor intensive effort. The thought behind that being that we could bring someone on a short-term basis, budget for that, and get it to a manageable status quo. There's also the, I guess, added benefit of that person not being long-term and therefore could kind of be the bad guy, and whoever the new person could come in to maintain the status quo wouldn't have that stigma about him or her. The other component of this is to have a full-time employee that would be dual certified. Now that may be difficult to find, maybe a bit of a unicorn, maybe something we have to train to or strive to over a period of time. But the thought that the committee had in that particular situation is it would be very cost effective to the city if it was one person. That during the busy lake season that they would be primarily dealing with law enforcement issues at the lake, permits, behavior on the water, proper boats, enforcing ordinances. But during non-lake season or slower times, they could point their energies and emphasis on the code enforcement to maintain minimum status quo and building code at the lake, which would be both for appearance and safety, not only of the residents, but for the many visitors that do come to the lake. And then finally, the third option that was really looked at and I think is kind of included here as certainly better than nothing, would be someone that lacks those certifications, but that would be a constant point of communication and contact for the appropriate city staff to address, whether that's law enforcement, whether that's code enforcement, and really to interface with the public at the lake, both residents and visitors, to address issues and get them in contact or get the proper people in contact immediately, and to diffuse situations that may exist that are somewhat emergent. So again, not a coincidence, that one is number one. And I'm going to take my first break here and ask if there's any questions about how the committee arrived at that or anything that I may have spoken to that wasn't clear to anyone in the group.
Anybody got any questions? Everyone okay moving on?
I was just going to say quickly, I had a conversation with the city manager today, and I think that moving forward, if we're not going to do something on the Lake Ranger, there's no sense in spending money on any of it. And I've asked her to come with a proposal at our next meeting for what that would look like, because I agree with what Joe said. It's an immediate win for our entire community and on the condition of the lake, but also there's revenue possibility, like all of that we're currently missing. I think the success of this whole deal kind of hinges on this Lake Ranger component, and if we're not willing to do it, why go down the path? So, that's my one. I'll shut up and listen now.
And my only comment too would be that whoever the individual is, that we could get the most qualified, most certified individual to fill that position, and not individual be show up on scene and not have the ability to take action because they're lacking one of those certifications or qualifications that would allow them to take care of the situation. And so I think that's something that would want to try to set this person up to be the most successful and effective in their position, versus being the person that stands there and waits for somebody else to get there that can actually take action. It kind of seems a little silly to me.
Yeah, Commissioner Flood, this will be the first time, but probably not the last. I will do my very best to speak for 12 people.
Yeah.
Outside of a document we all agreed on. But I to your point, we were all very aware that it took 80 years to get to this point. But the last time a significant look, intentional look from the city was about 10 years ago. Some of these things may not occur overnight.
Right.
We didn't get here overnight. We probably won't fix them overnight. And making sure that we have the right people and the resources for them to be successful is something that I think the committee would see as a very valuable trade-off as we go down this road.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to move on to emergency response facilities. Again, here, budget for and construct, remodel several facilities at the Shawnee Twin Lakes to house and assist with law and code enforcement personnel and first responders. Again, to your point, Commissioner Flood, making sure we have the resources to ensure success. Really, number one on that list is a dedicated dock for storage and efficient utilization of city-owned watercraft. Right now, for those that are unaware, when the police department has their lake patrols, they have to go to the city barn, trailer one of the watercraft, take it down, load it into the water, then they can get on it and do patrols, which may be fine for scheduled patrols, but there is a concern about our ability to respond in emergency situations. There's also concern about the frequency of the patrols, given the cumbersome nature of the process. And that's certainly not a knock on those conducting the patrols, but it'd be much easier to go jump in, again, setting them up for success if we had them docked in the water and readily available for utilization. And then the second one is a joint substation for really first responders, police department, fire, EMS. This would serve to provide a base of operation and provide increased presence in the area. I'll tell you, the second part of that, opportunities exist to partner with Citizen Potawatomi Nation, Potawatomi County, neighboring municipalities. Some of those preliminary discussions were had on a very informal basis by the committee, but there seems to be an interest to beef up presence in that area. And so if that's something that we could participate in, it would be of great benefit to the lake protection zone. Are there any questions with regard to that recommendation? All right. The third one is posting of regulations, wayfinding. Budget for and install signage for wayfinding and posting of regulations, including but not limited to. This is the really disappointing part because all of these were going to fly in on my PowerPoint and look really cool, but now everybody can read ahead. Location of boat ramps and recreation areas, lake rules and regulations at all point of entry, list of permits and associated fees and instructions to obtain permits, and contact information for lake personnel. I think most of these are fairly self-explanatory, but to the extent they're not, we want people to know that the lake is there. We want them to know where to go and how to get there. And once they're there, we want them to know what the rules are and how they can pay us money to enjoy the fun. Any questions? All right. That moves us on to the second work group, which focused on commercial activity and development. I know that this was a significant catalyst for the Lake Advisory Committee when language was presented to the commission with regard to introducing commercial activity at the lake. And so obviously this was an area that was going to be focused on and a lot of time was spent. The three kind of recommendations that come out of this group are a lake study, immediate, what we termed, and I have to give credit to Stacy, our tourism director, common sense development. That was her term, but we all really liked it. And then home sharing, which is your Airbnb, your VRBO. So jumping in, give a little bit of background on this lake study. Over and over during the process, we found ourselves saying, we don't know what we don't know. There was a lot of times where something sounded like a good idea and someone would very astutely raise the question, great, how do we know that's a great idea? What's the data that backs it up? And by and large, we as a city do not possess that data. So when we looked and surveyed other municipally owned lakes in the area and what they had done and what they had based their decisions on, we got a lot of responses. Well, we based that on boat counts, visitor counts, the types of boats we're seeing, where visitors are coming from, environmental impact. We don't have that information. I'm not saying we couldn't make educated guesses. The committee is not saying we couldn't make educated guesses. I think anecdotally, we all had a pretty good grasp of what the situation is. That being said, we don't know what we don't know. And as a result, this idea of a lake study was really born to try and obtain that information. And that came in safety and code enforcement. That came in parks and facilities. But it really came here at commercial development. Because ultimately, we're dealing with a water source. And the committee felt that if decisions were going to be made that would impact the water source, then there needed to be data and consultant recommendations that backed that up. And so the recommendation is to budget for, seek out and engage qualified professionals to conduct a lake study that will assess the current state of the asset and make recommendations regarding deliberate development and the conservation of the lakes. The study should result in a strategic master plan for the lake that aligns with a comprehensive plan for the city of Shawnee. Specific to commercial development, the study should address the following. First question is the need for commercial development and our ability to support it. Is this a road we should even go down? The second would be the impact of commercial development on the natural resources. Third, opportunities for Lake 2. And again, this is something that the committee kept coming back to. It's a blank slate. For those who haven't gone out there and visited, it is pristine in its beauty. It's very unadulterated. I'm not saying we should mess with it. The committee's not saying we should mess with it, but it needs to be looked at, and it needs to be done so intentionally because it is a blank canvas. Infrastructure needs for commercial development. Water lines, sewer lines are not cheap, and we need to know what is needed and what the cost associated with that would be. And again, those costs are for those physical improvements, but also environmental costs that may exist from adding that element to the lake protection zone. And then a reasonable timeline for completion on those things. So this is kind of a big ask, a big recommendation. There's an understanding that these type of comprehensive studies and professionals that conduct them are not free. But the results of the study would hopefully lay out the framework for long-term planning and strategic deployment of resources going forward. Any questions with regard to the lake study recommendation?
Any questions? I guess not. You must have explained it well.
All right. I love it. Either that or you're thinking in the back of your mind, was he serious about 3 hours? The next recommendation relates to the immediate common sense development. Again, ultimately, the committee did not believe that sitting still waiting for a lake study, which could be 1, 2, 3 budget cycles down the road, if in fact the commission went with it, and would likely have broader, large-scale, more expensive recommendations that could take time to deploy. We didn't believe sitting still and waiting for that was the right answer either. And so within that kind of thought process, guidelines were constructed for immediate commercial activity that would hopefully allow for low impact and temporary experimentation. The thought behind it was to allow reasonable commercial activity that could be easily modified or changed if it doesn't work or does not integrate with a future recommendation of the lake study. That being said, these are guidelines that were come up with. I think that they were well thought out, but they're certainly not going to be perfect. And I don't think that there was an expectation among the committee that it was our way or the highway with this. And so this is a particular area where I think we would welcome comment, and given the breadth of decision-making that this group has that vastly exceeds that of the committee, there are obviously other considerations that may need to be made here. That being said, pending the completion of the lake study, the city of Shawnee should make immediate changes to its code of ordinances to allow for limited commercial activity. This will require a complete study of existing ordinance to ensure elimination of conflicts, clear guidelines for utilization. Generally, the committee recommends the following. Limited commercial activity should include short-term, 1 to 7 days, utilization of designated city-owned property by permit for approved commercial activities. Approved commercial activities should include food trucks, pop-up shops, non-motorized watercraft rental, owner-employee operated boat charter services, and recreational equipment rental. Limited commercial activity should not include the construction of any permanent structures or placement of modular or pre-constructed structures on or near the waters of Shawnee Twin Lakes. Limited commercial activity will not include the lease or long-term, more than 7 days, utilization of any city-owned ground on or near the waters of Shawnee Twin Lakes. In order to accommodate recommendations of the future lake master plan, permits for limited commercial activity should be issued for a period less than 1 year. All permit applications will be subject to review and approval by city staff and will be issued only upon applicants' acceptance of all permit policies and conditions. Violations of permit policies and/or conditions by the permit holder will result in the revocation of said permits. Designated areas where the permitted commercial activities can occur should be specifically identified and marked by city staff at the following locations: Lake 1 boat ramp, Lake 2 boat ramp, Isaac Walton Park, Glen Collins Park, and then we've left open any other city-owned property identified by staff, but specifically excluding the cabin site leases. And I want to reiterate that was important to the committee, and I think it's important to your consideration. We don't believe that the commercial activity should be allowed at the residential cabin site leases. So this would be other city-owned property. And I think the 4 listed are primarily where that would occur, but we didn't want to close that off for future expansion. I would also add, when we talk about designated spaces and the limitations of the permits, our thought process was that a food truck that wanted to come for 4th of July weekend would need to be permitted for a specific spot that would be marked. That would be their spot, so that it wasn't a free-for-all. We wouldn't have food trucks driving around or just parking wherever, interfering with existing parking. And we would have a limit on the number of those types of enterprises that could be conducting business at any particular time. I will tell you there was a lot of discussion on this issue. And I go back to this overriding theme of not wanting to interfere with a lake study master plan and being able to undo things easily. And so that was why the committee went and said, we probably don't want to do long-term ground leases with stick-built buildings that can't easily be moved or may not meet the aesthetic of a recommendation that we get down the road. So that was kind of the backstory with that. But I don't suspect that you would hear a lot of pushback from the committee. This will be the second time I speak for 11 other people. I don't think you'd hear a lot of pushback from the committee, as long as, if the commission went outside of these guidelines, provided that it's something that could be easily undone or modified to become consistent with a master plan, if that makes sense. And with that, I would open it to any questions with regard to the immediate common sense development recommendation.
Anybody got any questions? You must be doing a really good job explaining, because I don't see any questions.
Just trying to keep track of my time. All right.
Or we're going to wait till the next meeting and just.
There you go. Yeah.
I'll be at the mediation. So. Home sharing, Airbnb, VRBO. So from the time the committee was formed, this has been kind of a citywide issue that's been being worked on, and the planning department, I know, is working with the planning commission and the city manager's office to take a very global approach, and I suspect that will be coming before this group sooner rather than later. So rather than trying to address it globally, the committee really just has an understanding that there will be global recommendations and potentially a home sharing ordinance that would impact the entire city. But the particulars of these recommendations are just for the lake protection zone, just for the areas that we were charged, the scope of our investigation and recommendations. This has been an issue at the lake. You guys are aware this has been an issue at the lake. And candidly, I think it's been an issue at the lake because there's not clarity in regulation and what's allowed, what's not allowed. And so that would really be the overriding recommendation is to clarify that. And candidly, I would say while the recommendation is to allow home sharing, if it were prohibited and that was clear, that would be better than not knowing exactly where it sits. And so that is something I know you guys will consider, but it was important to the committee that it be considered, and then when it is, that it be very clear how people can go about utilizing their property in this manner, if at all. So again, the recommendation is for some form of home sharing to be allowed at the lake. The guidelines need to be set forth with more clarity as soon as possible. Specifically, the committee provides the following recommendations for home sharing at the lake. Authorization should be by conditional use permit within the lake protection zone, which will allow for unique conditions to be imposed on each property based upon site-specific factors. Examples: parking, number of guests, activities, etc. Additional city permit should be required on an annual basis with a strike system that allows for the revocation or non-renewal of the permit for violations. Notice to cabin site leaseholders within 300 feet of any applicant for the conditional use permit and or home share permit. And permission for owner-occupied home share rentals should be generally allowed, including permitted accessory structures. But non-owner occupied applicants should be considered carefully. The Lake Advisory Committee recommends that a lake ranger, as discussed herein, be in place prior to non-owner occupied home sharing being allowed. Just to clarify that for the commission and for those in attendance, we really have three kind of possibilities for home sharing at the lake. We have those that do a traditional bed and breakfast type where they rent a room in their house. They never vacate the premises. They are owner occupied. We have those that have either utilized or constructed accessory structures within the code upon their cabin site lease that essentially act as little efficiency rentals. But again, they remain in the main structure and never vacate the premises during the rental period. And the third one that the committee is asking for caution to be exercised with would be if the commission entertains allowing non-owner occupied home share rentals, those being situations where the owner vacates the house completely and the renter is the only one on the specific property for that designated time period, that those be considered very carefully, particularly in light of the restrictions under the CUP. And again, as referenced, that we have a lake ranger present at the lake to assist with enforcement, de-escalation of problems, and communication with other city staff before allowing that. Are there any questions with regard to that?
Everybody good or got any questions?
All right. Home stretch, facility improvement, recreation. We've got roads, we've got parks, ramps, docks, and parking areas, and then general. I'm going to move pretty quickly through these. I think they're a little bit more self-explanatory. We've laid out some of the concerns with regard to the roads. I suspect that that would be either incorporated in or a study conducted with the city and the county for long-term road maintenance pursuant to this recommendation. There are some significant issues, but we understand that substantial repairs need substantial dollars, and that's difficult to deploy. But they are outlined within this recommendation, some particular trouble spots, and really an emphasis on kind of city-county collaboration and clearly defining responsibilities so that nothing falls through the cracks with regard to routine maintenance, because it's the belief of the committee upon driving on some of these roads, looking at some of these roads, that some of it is unavoidable, but some of it is likely deferred maintenance, which is an issue we encounter frequently. So, any questions with regard to that? All right, moving on to parks. We wanted to give kind of an outline of what was at each park, but also take this time to let the commission know, as part of our lake tour, we also went over to West Watkins and toured their facilities to compare what they had, look at how they were set up. When you do that, you see a stark contrast. And it's not very far, and it's something that I recommend each of you do, because I do think that there's a goal there on the other side of I-40. A lot of what you will see in these particular recommendations are really just, when we look at income generation, when we look at attracting people to that resource, there's much better amenities very, very close. And so a lot of these recommendations are based on being on par. Certainly the goal would be to be better, but at least to be on par with the amenities that are offered, whether it's shower facilities, RV hookups, or just the general aesthetic of the facilities. But you will see here when we talk about parks, the number one recommendation under there is to commit that the lake study needs to encompass the parks, the location of the parks, what amenities we need to be having to be modern at those parks. Do we need 2 parks? Do we need 1 park? Do we need 3 parks? What is our volume? What is our bather volume? What is our boat volume? How many visitors are we having visit these sites? Are we losing RV traffic? All of those questions we don't have answers to. And the committee felt strongly that while we have to continue to deploy dollars for routine maintenance and to keep our current facilities as nice as possible, we need to know some of those answers before we deploy a plan that would include significant outlay of cash for improvements in those areas. And again, I know you guys have read this. I know it's on the screen. I won't read through each and every piece of this, but there are. The cool thing is there's some really neat opportunities out there, and I think it was eye-opening when we were able to take the tour to see what those opportunities could be. But it was also eye-opening to see how much there is to maintain. And so we understand the challenge that goes with that, and certainly don't want to add to it without a plan to be able to do that and to pay for it. Any questions with regard to parks?
Guess not.
All right.
Joe, I would like, while it's on my mind, and we're on parks, with the, on the RV section of that,
Yeah.
we need to be very careful about accessibility, because from experience, there's very few places you can get to at Shawnee Lake in an RV because of bridge weight requirements. And a lot of times, that doesn't come into play until it's too late.
And that, Commissioner, is a perfect example of us not knowing what we don't know.
Looking around out there and in
Right.
discussion with different people, I have noticed that there's very few places that you can get to. And it's hard to, when you say RV, it's gonna be hard to define the weight limit to an RVer.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a 24-foot pull behind or a motorized, the weight difference, if you say RV, they're gonna head down that road and you can't cross in, you can't get to Lake 2.
Okay.
And only parts of Lake 1, and it's very tricky. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there.
I appreciate it. And I saw multiple pins moving, including my own, so I think we've got it annotated.
Not that I'm not in favor of having an RV. That would be fantastic, but
Right.
it could be very strategic, if at all.
Yeah, and that's, I think, where this is with a lot of these. And if we understand feasibility, whether that's improving the capacity of the roads or otherwise, it'll enable this group to prioritize. So, moving into ramps, docks, and parking areas. Some of this is pretty ministerial, but again, important and things that the committee did not want to go unnoticed or without comment. So the launch ramps need to be replaced the next time the water is low enough. The fence at the spillway has been breached. It's kind of bent down. It appears there's probably been some fish loss during high water with regard to that. And so the thought was that requires the environmental conditions to be proper, but we don't want to be in a situation where the environmental conditions are proper, but it hasn't been budgeted for. And so that is the recommendation. Would like to see addition of shower facilities to compete with other lake areas. That goes back to my prior comments. Parking needs better lighting and striping. Addition of limited number of slips attached to the docks would be convenient for boaters during launch, as well as picking up passengers. Would also help avoid some of the congestion and interaction between humans and boats and boats and boats, which are akin to some of the issues that were presented during city manager's presentation with regard to the location of the adaptive kayak launch. And there's a lot of those potential conflicts that exist in current setups. And then presently, there's really no restroom or shower facilities at Lake 2, which creates a difficulty. Any questions with regard to that? Okay. The next one is, and I've given it its own section because I know it's important to the commission. It was important to the committee, and I know it's important to a lot of people that are here tonight. And that's the adaptive kayak launch. I would lead by saying that it was many things were debated with regard to the adaptive kayak launch. The fact that this is a wonderful idea was not. Everyone agrees. This is a wonderful idea. The committee wants it to see done. The potential for this project cannot be understated. I had a note. I went back last night and read it. I didn't write down who said it, but someone said the potential for this project cannot be understated. And so ultimately, the committee unanimously wants to see it succeed. I did include this slide, which I lifted from Andrea's previous presentation, just to remind everybody of the potential locations that were being looked at. Its current location, which is annotated by C, and then we have the other potential locations. Each and every one of these locations was physically visited by the committee. Some members of the committee multiple times. Those site visits, combined with many hours of discussion, ultimately the recommendation that is being made, and I will read it, but the Lake Advisory Committee unanimously found value in the adaptive kayak launch and thoroughly vetted each option. Ultimately, the committee came to the very difficult decision that we do not have enough information to support a proposal at this time. And what I mean by that, or what we mean by that, is that there wasn't sufficient information to say that one of those options was clearly better than the others. The Lake Advisory Committee is therefore recommending that the adaptive kayak launch be removed and stored pending completion of the lake study and reinstalled pursuant to the recommendations thereof. Now, since this came out Friday, I'll just be very candid. I've heard, oh, they punted. I'm here to tell you that that's not what the committee did. The committee thoroughly vetted this, had a robust discussion, and felt like ultimately that was the right answer to bring to you guys from where we stand, from where we were within the scope of what we were asked to do. But we also discussed, and we understand, that our desire for additional information may not be a luxury that this group has. And that you may have to make a decision on one of these 4 locations. And as a backup to this, and this will be number 3 because where I'm going to speak for the group, but I feel comfortable in doing so. Ultimately, there are pros and cons to each of the 4 locations that have been presented. If the commission chooses to place the dock in one of those 4 outlined locations, the committee believes that the risks are greatly mitigated if we have a lake ranger. So when we talk about those risks, we talk about these conflicts. We talk about boater, swimmer, non-motorized versus motorized boat interaction, all of those interactions. If we have a presence, we mitigate those conflicts. We have someone to enforce the rules. We don't eliminate, but we reduce bad actors. And if something bad does happen, we have an immediate response. And so I want to be very clear. We understand the difficult situation that this group is in. We made that recommendation within the scope of our charge, and in a perfect world, I think could probably get agreement that that information from the lake study would be beneficial to this ultimate decision, but understand pursuant to what I just discussed that may not be a reality. That being said, I'm happy to answer any questions as it relates to any specific conversations we had, any specific considerations we made in coming to that recommendation.
But got questions? Don't see any.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Have a little general section here. Didn't really know where they fit and that they're important. And the first one may not seem like it, but it kept coming up, and that is lake permits should return to sticker form. Be displayed clearly on the boat. This is easily accomplished for those that want to come, buy it on their phone, online, the first time they visit. Staff can drop it in the mail so that they can put it on for the next time. But it makes it much easier for whether it's the lake ranger, whether it's the resource officers that are patrolling the lake in the summer, whether it's code enforcement that might be out there. If there's a boat on the water and doesn't have a sticker, that's easy. And then we can generate that revenue virtue of a citation, which will likely be followed up by the purchase of a permit. And again, I don't think we need to look at this as preying on our visitors, but at the same time, every other lake we looked at not only has these rules and these permits and these fees, they actively enforce them.
Right.
And that is something that we have gotten away from and we believe as a committee need to get back to. And then the other one is just Lake 2 is underutilized. Again, I think the study will ultimately tell us if this is a road we go down, what, if anything, we should do there with regard to the regulations and utilization. But there is significant anecdotal evidence that Lake 1 may be at or near capacity on busy weekends. We don't have those boat counts yet to verify that. Other municipally owned lakes we looked at actually have caps on the number of boats they'll put in based upon studies that they've performed. But it would be an option to relieve some of that pressure. It may not be an option we end up going down, but we felt that it needed to be looked at. Okay, so in conclusion, and I'll go through this because it's largely a repeat, but we did break it down into long-term action items and then immediate action items for a couple of reasons. Number one, there are things that need to be done immediately. We've addressed some of those, but I've pushed this theme, the committee pushed this theme of we want to make sure that the big stuff we do is really intentional, to use Commissioner Flood's term.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not create a situation where we find ourselves chasing bad money with good. Let's be good custodians of those resources, which I know you guys take very, very seriously and have to consider in any of these recommendations. So we've laid out kind of our definitions here for long-term being recommendations that require significant data gathering and or professional input to develop and create strategic master plan in order to implement. The development of the strategic master plan and implementation thereof is likely to bear significant expense and take longer to accomplish. Juxtaposed with the immediate action items, which are the recommendations that can and should be implemented immediately to address needed modernization, an imminent problem, preservation, protection of assets, or deferred maintenance. These items bear costs but are relatively inexpensive and or unlikely to be modified by a strategic master plan. So when we look at the long-term action items, really this boils down to the study. Long-term, we think a comprehensive lake study, again, whether that's budgeted this year, next year, or 5 years from now, the recommendation is that that be looked at and fit into the budget as soon as reasonable. And then from there, I think a lot of decisions become much easier with regard to strategic planning at the lake. But we do want to and have prioritized, based upon our recommendations, what that study should address. Number one being the location of the adaptive kayak launch, if that's still at issue. Location of long-term commercial activity, if any. Infrastructure needs. Location and substantial improvements of city facilities. Disposition of cabin site leases. Whether or not those remain leases or there's recommendations from consultants and experts to potentially look at selling those to leaseholders and offering other fee title to raise revenue, which is something that other communities have looked at. But again, it's very specific and requires a lot of information to make that decision. Lake 2 development and then long-term road maintenance, which leads to the immediate action items. I don't want to beat the dead horse, but the lake ranger and active enforcement of codes is in bright shining neon lights, number one on that list. Dedicated dock for emergency response, patrol boats, signage, wayfinding and regulations, modernization of lake ordinances, infrastructure, which we've broken out into existing facility maintenance, upkeep and improvements, spillway, fencing repair, boat launch repair, and short-term road maintenance. And then allowing limited commercial activity in designated areas. And then the home sharing regulations and clarifications. Those are recommendations for things to tackle immediately. Any questions with regard to those recommendations?
I got any questions? I don't
Lake-
think so.
Lake stickers is exciting.
Yeah.
Been trying to get that done for a long time. With your permission, or Joe's, would it be possible to take a quick raise of hand survey from everyone in the room over a particular subject?
As long as that particular subject fits within the constraints of the
It
agenda
does.
item.
It does, if you, with your permission.
No, go ahead.
Excluding Mark. Who here owns one motorized watercraft? Only one. Only one motorized watercraft. Okay. How many in this room own more than one motorized watercraft? Okay.
So about 5 there.
How many in the room own one non-motorized watercraft? How many own more than one non-motorized? Okay. I wasn't going to increase the number, just.
Oh, well, thank you for participating.
I
in that.
thought that was going to be the results of
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
with the stickers, I just kind of wanted to make sure what I had in my head was accurate.
Yep.
Am I to surmise from the impromptu polling that perhaps we have a tiered permit structure?
That would be something that I would be considering, yes.
Not presently.
It's a recommendation. We didn't get that deep in the weeds, but it is a recommendation of the committee that going forward that they be permitted as well.
All righty. Anything else?
That's all I have. If there's
Anything
any
else?
other general questions or
Anything?
I would,
Anybody got any other questions?
if anything jumped out, like with Commissioner Rutherford, that you would like to share with me and the committee members that are present and other staff so that we can be working on solutions. Commissioner Seahorn pointed out a discrepancy in the ordinance with relation to watercraft sizes today that we're working on. So I'm certain there will be a few items. Feel free to reach out with those.
Yeah, I had an email today. Somebody had pointed out a number of things, so I'll forward that on
Okay.
to you. But
Perfect.
appreciate all the work that you guys have done on this. Everybody in the committee and Joe and commissioners that worked on this. So appreciate all the hard work and bringing this to us.
Well, it's been echoed before. We appreciate the opportunity, and I certainly appreciate, I know the rest of the staff that participated appreciate the input from the citizens that were able to join the community. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All righty. So item 10, by power of the chair, we're going to move number 10 to after number 15. So we move on to item 11, have annual homeless point in time count. Mr. Harkins is up. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, Ryan Harkins, Community Development. We wanted to give a quick update momentarily.
No, you just take your time.
We wanted to give the governing body an update on the point in time count. As many know, the point in time count is an annual event that counts the homeless in the community. As an entitlement community and a community dealing with homeless issues, this is something we do annually. The preferred method is a 24-hour period. So in other words, once you start, you complete your count within 24 hours. We had a partner agency that originally was looking at doing the count on our behalf, but had a number of staff that were out sick just prior to that event. And so 2 weeks ago, city staff and some volunteers quickly, including some of you, quickly assembled and provided a team to be on the ground to do the point in time count. So preliminarily, what we're looking at right now from that count is 59 unsheltered individuals. We were able to count from our partners 15 that were actually in a shelter of some kind. We also were able to document 5 that we would call couch homeless. They do not have a permanent residence. They basically bum the couch or spare room of someone they know, and oftentimes float from place to place for over a period of time. That gives us 62 as well that we observed either that were sleeping or did not want to be bothered, did not want to talk, but 62 that we counted in different encampments. That gives us a subtotal of 141 individuals. In addition, we were able to obtain from local schools 30 individuals that we would additionally call couch homeless, and typically we assume at least one parent with each of those children. So that gives us 60 total. We also were able to document and obtain information that 14 individuals in some type of transitional homeless dealing with substance abuse issues. That gives us a total of 215. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, however, when you do the point-in-time count, assumes that you are finding about a fourth of the total homeless population when you do your point-in-time count. So when you take that number of 215 times 4, that gives us a rough assumption of 860 individuals, which is a staggering number, and definitely an increase over what was documented the last point-in-time count. And some of that is because obviously COVID has taken an impact, but there are a number of factors that go into why individuals are homeless. And we heard a number of stories last week with the winter storm when city staff and volunteer groups quickly put in an emergency shelter together at the C3 church about why individuals were homeless, loss of jobs, medical issues, a death in the family, things just one issue after another. And it truly goes to the idea that there are many individuals in our community that are one or two issues away from being in that position. But to give you an idea of what we do with this data, we use it, obviously, one, to apply for additional grant opportunities, two, to help document with partner agencies what the needs are, but also begin to document how we can address those needs and how we can bring different partner groups together. And so this data will not just sit there, it will begin to be used as part of a larger continuum of care strategy that staff is beginning to work on as our own entity and lead agency, but also how we partner with other agencies outside throughout the rest of the state. I know that's a lot briefly, so are there questions I can answer?
No, but I tell you, I just want to thank city staff for stepping up so quickly to do the point-in-time count. I mean, that's a HUD requirement, and if we don't do that, then we don't get our piece of the pie and the funding and the continuum of care, and other communities would gladly take our piece of the pie, I'm sure. So I appreciate everything that you guys did to step up at very short notice and make that count happen so we can make sure the money comes here to Shawnee like it's supposed to. And then the effort the other day when you guys opened the shelter and brought a lot of people in out of the cold. Man, I tell you, city staff and C3 Church and a long list of folks here in town pitched
Absolutely.
in. I mean, amazing what they did, and that's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that being part of the count last year and this year, based on the amount of hours put into preparation last year to have a successful count, and then the fact that in less than 24 hours, Erica and the rest of the staff were able to pull off something that was as successful as it was is just astounding. Yeah. And so that's not something you want to be you want to have to do very many times, but the fact that the individuals in charge were able to just absolute rock stars and able to jump in and go and do what they needed to do, and nobody was pointing fingers, nobody was saying, "No, this is your fault, and we're just going to throw up our hands. We've got a job to do. Let's get after it and get it done." And the city staff did an amazing job, and so y'all should be commended for that.
We wanted to make sure the governing body had a good base data of information moving forward, and we feel like this helps with that.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
All righty. So we are to item 12, new business.
No new business.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, Commissioner comments. I think we'll start down your end.
Okay, very informative night, lots of information to take in and process. First, I want to say thank you to Lake Advisory Committee. Clear the level of dedication and work that you all put into the process. Thank you, Joe, for leading that and your work tonight. I look forward to have several pages of notes to ask questions about at a later date after I do a little research and process, and I think we'll come up with a solution that is good for the entire city of Shawnee, meaning all of our residents, and I think that's important. I want to comment real quick to Ryan and Erica and the team that stood up the shelter at C3. Thank you for being proactive and the work in that nature. It was great to see, and a very effective, in my mind, public-private partnership. My team participated, and their reports of working with city staff were just glowing. And one of the things that I think really made a difference, and so I know that staff facilitated this, but also I want to give a special thanks to C3. They welcomed pets, which is no small feat to welcome into a building, but not allowing pets many times is a hindrance to people seeking or making use of the aid that's available and the help, because they simply don't want to leave their companion. And so for C3 to allow that and our city staff to proactively think to ask, I think was a really big deal. I don't see Steve that talked earlier, but I just want to tell him we'll be talking to planning to make sure that we have that issue covered and can get him some information. We'll get his info off the sheet. Real quickly and finally, wanted to address one quick thing, just a clarification. It's been brought up a couple of times about the OBU authority. And I think it was clarified last time that the city did not loan them any money, but it was talked about that the city would be on the hook in case OBU were to default on that loan. Did a little research, talked to Joe, talked to Randy, and just want to clarify what I found. Just real clear that the city is not on the hook for that money. Randy and OBU are fine with us saying that the Oklahoma Baptist are the guarantors of all that debt. So it's not on the city financials, it's not on the audit. The city is in no way encumbered by that in the future. Just quickly, I'll read. The trust was formed pursuant to Title 60 of the Oklahoma statutes, and a result is a legal entity that is separate and distinct from the city of Shawnee. The only manner in which the city of Shawnee could be held liable for the debts of the trust would be in the event that the city of Shawnee acted as a guarantor to indebtedness of the trust, or the city of Shawnee pledged collateral. Neither are the case in this instance, and just thought it was worth a little bit of investigation and clearing up. Now we have.
There we go.
That's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to say thank you to the Lake Advisory Committee and the individuals that worked so hard in bringing this to us. Thank you, Joe, for an outstanding presentation and for being as honest and open as you could about the opinion of yours and the other individuals' opinions. Just want to clarify, whenever I speaking on the option number 3 for the Lake Ranger and saying it seemed silly, I wasn't saying that was the recommendation was silly. It just seems silly to sit an individual up to not be able to succeed, and so hoping that whatever position we find ourselves in as far as putting an individual out there, that individual have the most qualifications that they can to do the best job that they can. And so again, like I said, just wanted to make sure that I clarified that. Let's see. Also, Steve, with the question about Smoking Oaks, I know that's something we could probably figure out pretty quickly as far as why or what that is, and whether or not that is a met moratorium was hearsay, or if it is actually on the books, or what that is. Fiona, thank you so much for bringing that awesome, amazing information to us. I know that I'd heard that before. That's pretty amazing that we're going to get to be designated as that. I'm really excited to see what that, not only that recognition, but what that really means as far as attracting and being intentional about having other woman entrepreneurs coming into our amazing city and working and knowing that this is a place where they will have support from other amazing women who have done amazing things to make their businesses thrive in the city of Shawnee. Let's see here. Rob, if you have a question about my residence, I would gladly hang out and talk to you about it right after, just to clarify that. So if you have something that you feel like you need to ask me, I have no problem answering you. I'm excited about the IFYR. I know there's been some questions and concerns about the future of that, but I know that it's a good thing, not only for the city of Shawnee, but also for the young people that are involved in that. And I so long to see that continue and become bigger and just be the awesome, amazing thing that it is and has been in the past. And I hope that all the hang-ups and hiccups that have kind of hindered it in the future, that those will fall away soon and we can get back to creating not get back to, but continue to create an amazing event for young people. And also, again, as always, we have the best city staff around. Amazing individuals that work their tails off, and some of the they're good folks, and I love working with them. I love doing things with them, and very rarely do you see somebody that's not giving their all on everything that they've been asked to do, and that it's evident by conversations with individuals that work with them and do things with them. And so keep up the awesome, amazing work. You guys are great.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
I want to thank the Lake Advisory Committee for all of the work that they put into this study. Some of the things are, we've been pushing for a lake ranger for a while, but now that's going to kind of bring it to everyone. It's several administrations I've been kind of pushy at that, and we weren't successful. So that and code enforcement are the two things that have been trying to get done. Stickers. So that's awesome that the committee agrees with those things. So thank you for your work there. I want to thank the city staff, street clearing, the street crew, the road crews did a great job. I got several pictures, like 3 people sent me pictures of the truck staggered and go, why are these guys like this? That's the way they're supposed to have done it. We just now got in the modern world with our current leadership and are doing it correctly, and it works very well. So thank you for the job that was done on the streets.
Yeah, I think streets did really well. Just like I say, they had it cleared and sanded or salted, whatever you did, all the intersections. Was really impressed in how well the streets were cleaned and how, little effort that, on the side streets and stuff that we had to make to get to the main arteries. Lake Advisory Committee put a lot of effort into this, which I was involved in it. Joe put tons of time in it. I appreciate it, Joe. Some of the hot topics, foremost were ranger needed. Everything out there has been kind of, the last 25 years, hadn't been a whole lot done out there, or policing done. We go out there periodically and really don't see what we saw when we got in the boats and went around the shorelines and the dilapidated docks and the dilapidated structures and things that we just don't have the people to take care of it. So I think that the ranger and code enforcement is something that's been a long time coming. So hopefully we'll be able to budget that in some fashion. Stickers, You know, that was another topic we talked about, and I know Oklahoma lakes, Eufaula, Texoma kayaks are not required to get a permit. You know, the thought process on our end was you're using city ramps, city park. If something happens and we have to disperse a boat to pull somebody in or something like that, you're utilizing the same infrastructure that a boater would use. And we're not limiting the kayaks to so many feet off the shoreline. You have full run of the lake is the way I understand the ordinances are going to be used or, you know, written. So that was kind of the thought process on having to permit kayaks. You know, I don't really have a problem with it. You know, personally, what I think is probably immaterial, but, you know, fair is fair. If you're floating in a boat out there without a motor on it, then, you know, you're using oars or whatever else, I think you ought to pay just like everybody else. The kayak dock, you know, that's another hot topic as far as the way I understand this, and the city manager will probably back me up on this, is if we leave it in the water, we have to make it ADA compliant at a substantial cost to the city of Shawnee. So I think the process that we looked at was twofold. Can we make it work for the least amount of money? You know, where it's at is going to require tons of infrastructure, parking, and different things. And I think on this whole project, the cart got ahead of the horse. It was kind of a rush deal from the standpoint, even when Chance was working on it, I think it was a hurry up, not a well thought out process on where to put it or what I was going to have to do it. From a city standpoint, I don't think we initially thought was going to have to make it ADA accessible, parking lots and everything we're going to have to do. So that was part of the discussion on removing it for the time being until we figure out the best place to put it, twofold, where it works the best and where it's the most cost feasible for the city. You know, and I don't know, that's not what you want to hear, but, you know, when we're talking $180,000 to put it in, you know, that's a huge investment to where it's kind of like the Broadway project. You know, at some point, hey, in a perfect world, it's great if we have all kinds of money, but
we have all kinds of grants that we could have already done by now.
well, you know, then that's not my job to write grants. So, you know, from the city standpoint, you know, maybe, but we hadn't even received it into our stuff, so there's a lot of legwork that wasn't done prior to. So, you know, I hate it. You know, the other side of that is it's going to be cumbersome, whatever we do, but on my end, I'm not, you know, on board to spend $180,000 to put it there unless that's the most cost-effective place to do it. So, you know, if I'm spending $180,000 of the city's money, you know, which you're talking grant money, it's a total different ballgame. That's all I've got.
Thank you, sir.
Well, actually, I was going to ask for a pass tonight since I've been down for 3 weeks, and I want to get back up to speed, but something was said during public comments that I wanted to comment on, and it was done very diplomatically. Smoking Oaks, and he thought a moratorium had been declared. There was a lot of talk about a moratorium because of the north-south runway of the airport being under the flight path of planes, and those 3 or 4 or 5 houses that were built. But he said one way in, one way out, if you remember that. I have personally referred to it as probably the largest cul-de-sac in Oklahoma, because there is only one way in and one way out. And we have a major pinch point at Hardesty and Penny. It's a low water bridge creek crossing. And I don't know how many years ago it was, but you can count it back. Ron Barbeau was the city manager. And he and I stood out there one night. Been pouring rain all day, and the creek was coming up. And he put a fire apparatus on the west side of the creek just in case something occurred on that side, because no one could get there if that water was up high. That apparatus stayed there for about 24 hours. I forgot how many rooftops are west of that pinch point, but it's definitely a life safety situation. And so there was a lot of talk about not allowing any more building to go on out there. And there's a lot more to the story, but that just hit a nerve with me that since I've referred to it as the largest cul-de-sac in Oklahoma, and we could have a problem if a plane would crash right at Hardesty and Penny, because there would be no way to get any emergency vehicles to the west. I think that's all I have to say.
All righty, thank you, sir. I don't have a whole lot. We've talked about a lot. Lake Committee, again, I want to thank everybody involved in doing that work. That was all good information, and I'm sure we have a lot more conversations there. Again, I want to thank the city staff and everybody involved in everything done with the homeless efforts, the count, and the shelter that was put on in a difficult situation. Fiona, the information you gave us was really good to hear. Well, we all knew it, didn't we? I mean, all you do is look around. There's lots of great businesses in town owned by women and organizations run by women. So, I mean, Shawnee's a good town, and I think all of us, we knew knew that anyway, but it's really good that the state is going to recognize us for that, and we really appreciate that. And another thing I want to brag on city staff is the snow and ice that we got really turned into a big non-event. You know, I came up and signed that declaration in the morning just so we'd have that ready, and that was the right thing to do. And guess what? Hopefully we don't need it. But I mean, things went really smooth. Streets got cleared off well. We certainly didn't have all the water main breaks and everything we had last year. I mean, I was with our OG&E representative this afternoon, and we were talking about, we didn't have all the power lines down, and I mean, it just turned into a big non-event, and that is really good. And I never even thought about it. You talk about staggering the snow plows. I never even thought about that. Where I grew up, we got a whole lot more snow, and that's the only way you ever saw that done. Yeah. But to me, that's just the way that was always done. So that's good to know. Yeah. So with that, we will move on to, let's see, we are going to the, holy cow, Airport Authority, right? That seems to be the next. I'm sorry. Do we recess this and then so we will recess and we will go to the Airport Authority. Item 1 is consider approval of consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
And Daniel. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of consent agenda. Item 1. Motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, and 1 abstention. Any new business?
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. We are adjourned. We'll go on to the Municipal Authority. So item 1 is consider approval of consent agenda.
Move to approve item 1.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval of item 1. We'll call the question. Motion passes 5 in favor and 1 abstention. Item 2, consideration of a budget amendment for Fund 501, Shawnee Municipal Authority, to move full-time employee position budget from Fund 501 to Fund 001, General Fund, due to new department position arrangement. And Jacob is up. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Yes, as the memo states, we moved a construction inspector position over from SMA to the general fund, just a rearrangement of positions to work out better for the city. And we're moving funds over from 501 to 001 to fund that.
Okay.
If any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Anybody get any questions? No questions. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Okay, Darren. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 2. We'll call the question. Motion passes. All right, 6-0. Item 3, new business.
No new business.
Thank you. We are adjourned. And go back here. Where are we at? All righty, so we will reconvene city commission meeting. Discussion, item 14 is discussion, consideration, and possible action to enter into executive session for discussion related to Fairview Cemetery Mausoleum in accordance with, let's see, Title 25, 307B3 and 4, to discuss confidential communications between a public body and its attorney concerning the purchase or appraisal of real property and a pending investigation, claim, or action that the public body, with advice of its attorney, has determined that disclosure will seriously impair the ability of the public body to process the claim or conduct a pending investigation, litigation, or proceeding in the public interest. With all that, looking for a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion that we move into executive session.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second. We'll call the question. Motion passes 6-0. We will go down the hall and we will be right back. Let's see. So, all righty, item 15. Consider matters discussed in executive session related to the Fairview Cemetery Mausoleum in accordance with 25307B3 and 4 to discuss confidential communications between a public body and its attorney concerning the purchase or appraisal of real property and a pending investigation, claim, or action. That public body, with advice of its attorney, has determined that disclosure will seriously impair the ability of the public body to process the claim or conduct a pending investigation, litigation, or proceeding in the public interest. All righty, so.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
I move that the City of Shawnee revoke the April 5th, 2021 acceptance of the mausoleum building, funds, and records from the Fairview Mausoleum Association Incorporated based upon 1, the Mausoleum Association's failure to perform by not turning over funds and records, 2, the request for the addition of a material term of the donation, specifically a grant of indemnification by the city, and 3, the need to further discuss the disposition of the real property and, if being considered for transfer to the city, the appropriate due diligence necessary to accept. Further, staff shall immediately communicate with the Fairview Mausoleum Association Incorporated to further discuss a comprehensive proposal for the disposition of the mausoleum to be considered by the commission at a future date.
Thank you, sir. So we have a motion.
I'll second.
That was quick. All righty. And Daniel and Darren. All righty. So we will call the question. Call you quick draw. Motion passes 6-0. So we're going to go back to item 10, which we moved a little while ago. Alrighty. Consideration of the following budget amendments for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. And you were up, Jacob.
All right. Yes, the first amendment that we have associated or discussed on the memo, the $35,000 approximately, it's like the SMA budget amendment. It's the other side of that. It's just moving the construction inspector position over to the general fund. If there are any questions over that, I'd be happy to answer. And the next budget amendment would be what you discussed in item 14, the cemetery mausoleum capital outlay, reducing the appropriated funds associated with that.
All righty. Anyone get any questions? How about a motion?
I'll move to accept the budget amendment.
Thank you, sir. Have a motion, look for a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All righty, we have a motion and a second to approve item 10. We'll call the question. And motion passes 6-0. So we will go to item 16, which is we are adjourned. All righty, thank you everybody for sticking around.